Here we are, Chapter 6, Part 2, where we're talking about the product life cycle. What I first want to talk about are these two lines and sort of how to read this graph. And so what we have here, and let me, is we have a line for sales, and that starts right here at the beginning of the introduction phase, because we're not obviously going to get any revenue for our product or our service until we start selling it. But I do want to highlight that we have another line here that I want you to look at, this lower blue line called profit. And profit is essentially negative during another phase. And I call this, well, it's R&D, or we can think of it as pregnancy, where you're incubating the product idea, you're going through the new product development process. So NPD happens here, new product development. Okay, so then we have the introduction starting here, so sales start, but profits are still negative in this phase. So what actually happens in this phase? Well, first of all, what we have is our marketing objective to gain awareness and trial with very little, if any, competition. As respect to our 4 Ps, in terms of our product, we want to introduce the initial version. In terms of price, we want to use one of two strategies, either a skimming strategy where we price our product very high because there are no competitive products, or we price it low to get people used to the product or using the product, and that's called penetration pricing. In terms of distribution, obviously we want to build our network that fits our target market and how they want to receive the product. And for promotion, we want to build what's called primary demand, which is demand for the entire product category, not necessarily demand for our brand. So we're basically introducing our brand and the product category to consumers during this stage. So obviously we're going to expect negative profits here, or losses. Here's some examples. For example, when Colgate introduced its 2-in-1 toothpaste and mouthwash, it had to educate people. So notice the picture in the circle here that's showing you how to use it, because there are two options here. You could use it as toothpaste or you could use it as mouthwash. And so this is educating people how to utilize the product and gaining market trial by offering the coupon. Another example is when the first ear thermometers were introduced in the 90s. Notice how the actual product category is very large and the brand itself is very small. That's because we had to get people used to the category of an ear thermometer and that reliability, and then if they demanded the ear thermometer from their stores or asked retail stores about it, the only brand available at that time was the Thermoscan brand. So in introduction, you're really focusing on getting customers to try your product or to be aware of what it does, to introduce new behaviors, etc. Now, in the growth stage, what is happening is that we're seeing competitors arrive. And so because competitors are arriving, here we want to start differentiating our products. So if we have different product versions or different features, we might start introducing those. In terms of pricing, we want to maintain a stable pricing policy during the growth stage. And our goal is to gain as much distribution as possible. Now that we have competitors, the goal is to engage in what we call building selective demand. So let me change my color here. So now we're building demand not simply for the product category, but demand for our particular brand. And then finally, when we're talking about what can we expect from profits, profits grow and peak in this stage. So just when they start decreasing, that's actually how we know we're entering the next stage. Now notice sales are still high, and they might start to be leveling off, but the goal here is for you to know that profits peak in the growth stage. As we enter the maturity stage, we have to defend market share, extend the product life, and find those last buyers. There's high competition. Think of your grocery store, but marginal competitors leave. So companies that sort of got on the bandwagon in the growth phase to take advantage of a fad have now left the market, and those best sellers are the ones that remain. So in terms of the 4 Ps, again, we would offer your full product line, set your price to defend market share, have distributional efficiency, because now you really want to be focused in the maturity stage of selling to your best customers and your best products. And finally, promotion is reminder oriented, product positioning, so it could be competitive marketing where you're showing why your product is better than another brand, offering sales incentives to capture those last people in the product adoption curve or the diffusion of innovation, and again, building selective demand for your particular brand. Finally, profits start to decline. That's the indicator that you're in maturity, and sales will often peak in the maturity stage as well. So we see that sort of peak level for sales here, whereas profits are going to start to turn negative. An example of a mature product is really just managing people's awareness of the brand. If the company does good things or is known for its reliability in this case, then you want to be emphasizing that in your promotional communication. And then we hit the decline phase, and the marketing objectives here can be to put the product out to harvest, to delete it, or to maintain it at the same level you've been doing before. But ultimately, in the decline phase, you want to maintain your best sellers because the competition is reduced and you want to squeeze, the last bits of revenue that you possibly can from your best customers. So you would want to maintain your best sellers. In terms of price, competition can be common here because everybody's sort of trying to squeeze the last out. Or you see that maybe your trademark or your patent has expired, and so you're now getting competitors, unbranded competitors in the market space. In terms of distribution, you want to limit those to your best and cut back on promotion. And then you have to really make a decision. Are you going to maintain the product? Are you going to delete or stop making it? Are you going to sell off the product to a larger competitor? There's lots of decisions to be made here. But I do want to again emphasize that this decline stage is not particular to one brand. It means the entire product category is declining in demand or has saturated the market. And what you see here is with any technology-based product, as one category is peaking, another is in the introduction phase. So peak, introduction. And then if I spread this out farther to MP3s or digital music, we would see the same thing happen. So the benefit of that is as your brand is then losing, or as your product category, is losing market, you have another product in the wings in the growth stage. So this is a cause to always be innovating within an organization. Oh, yeah, here we go. So this shows this a little bit more graphically with regard to digital downloads. So again, you see that as one product is peaking, another product has begun, and so on. Now we're going to talk about product variations. A product item is an individual product identified by its SKU or stock keeping unit. A product line is a set of individual products that are closely related. And finally, we have the product mix, which is all of the different product lines offered by a company. And the book talks about the difference between product width versus product depth and product consistency. We'll discuss a few of those. Let's talk about product lines and how they combine to form the product mix. So a product line consists of related individual products. And so the depth refers to the number of categories within a product line, and breadth refers to the number of product lines within a company's product mix. For example, if we're looking at BMW, the BMW brand is a product line, but they also own Mini, they also own Rolls-Royce, and they also own the Motorrad brand. I'll give you a better example as well. If we go to Procter & Gamble's US website of brands, you will see that they own a lot of brands that you are probably very familiar with. So on the left side here, we have product categories. And so the breadth of things that Procter & Gamble offers are the number of different product categories. And then within a particular product category, we have varying levels of depth. So for example, in the baby care line, they only have 2 brands, though you might not realize that they own both of these since they are competing products. But then in the fabric care, there's 8 or more brands. And so you can see that some of their lines have more depth than others. So this is what we mean by product depth and product width and product breadth. Now we'll talk about how a marketer evaluates a company's product portfolio. And we normally do that using a consulting tool that you may have heard about before called the Boston Consulting Group Growth Share Matrix. And what is happening here is a consultant is evaluating your brand relative to other brands in the market. So this is the relative market share component. And it's relating your product to the growth rate of the market as a whole. Let's talk about each of these categories in turn. So first we have the STAR. This is a business unit that has high market share in a high growth industry. So it would generate substantial cash flow, but also require a large investment. So think about companies that have very successful technology products. Maybe you could think of an Apple, or maybe you think of Tesla. Both of those companies have high market share in a high growth technology market. So they have to consistently reinvest their profits for future growth. Here we also have a question mark. This is within the same high growth industry. What if you had a product that had low market share? And therefore you have poor profit margins. Well, if you don't put any money into it or the industry slows down, you're at risk of becoming a dog. But you also could invest to earn market share, perhaps combining with other brands that are in the same situation. So you see contraction in the product offerings in a high growth market because some companies buy out other competitors or merge with other competitors. Or you could just simply get your money out of this particular investment as the industry growth rate slows down. So in other words, you make your profit when the category is growing, and then as it slows, you get out. Now, a cash cow is interesting because it's a high market share unit of your business with low market growth. If you think about some of those brands that I showed you on the P&G website, many of them are cash cows. Pampers, for example, has high market share in the diaper care industry, which is relatively low market growth. Birth rates have slowed. We're not in a baby boom. And so this cash cow generates profits and cash flow for the company. Now, of course, you want to maintain your superiority, but you can also use those profits to finance new products or growth elsewhere in the firm. And finally, we have dogs. Dogs have low market share in a low market growth industry. So they may generate little profit, but they still might generate profit. So think about products that are niche products that have a very loyal target market, that might be products that we buy on a daily or weekly basis. And we can focus on that niche. Of course, the other options in this business unit analysis category are to harvest the product, divest the product, or eliminate the product. And these would be similar to products on the decline that we saw in the product lifecycle lecture part. Your book actually gives an example, and your next test will have one as well, of how to calculate the market growth rate for an industry. Well, first we define your market by finding this year's and last year's sales figures. And so let's say your current market sales were $2.3 million minus last year's sales. That would mean that you have a sales increase of $300,000. We would take that $300,000 and as a percentage of last year's sales, we would divide it by last year's sales, in this case 2 million, and that would give us a percentage. The percentage would then, or it would be a decimal, and then of course multiply that by 100 in order to get your percentage rate. So in this example, we have a 15% market growth rate. Now, a lot of times students will say, well, what is the magic number for knowing whether something is high growth or low growth? And I don't have the answer to you because it really depends on the market. It depends on the revenues, the average price for a product in that category, and so on. So this is just the way to calculate it. It's a percentage of last year's sales is the market rate growth rate. Finally, the book talks about the GE McKinsey 9-box matrix of how to make some decisions regarding your business units as a result of whether they have high competitive strength versus low, and whether they are in an attractive industry or not in an attractive industry. And basically, if you see any question on this on the test, it will be more definitional than application-based. This is just the competitor of the Boston Consulting Group matrix. Last but not least, we talk about industry attractiveness regarding market size, market growth rate, how easy it is to enter this competitive market, who are the competitors, how profitable is it, what are our social and environmental impacts or technology requirements to get into this particular industry, the legal implications, or other business requirements. So these are all decisions that we would make as an organization as to whether or not we want to create or start a business unit in that particular industry. Likewise, competitive strength has to do with either our market share compared to our competition, the growth rate, the skills and competencies of the management team, product quality, brand strength, distribution, promotional skills, production capacity and efficiency, unit costs, and then research and development success. In other words, how good are we at making a competitive product? So in summary, Chapter 6 discusses how a product is much more than the basic manufactured thing on a shelf that you might think of. The competitive edge that organizations usually have come from the augmented or perceived product, which is often enhanced by branding and brand equity. So brands have a value that must be carefully managed. And companies need innovation to stay alive. However, new product development can be risky. Finally, product portfolios should be balanced. So when we look at the product life cycle and how as things peak, we want to have things in the incubation phase. As things start to decline, we want to have products in the growth stage. And then in the Boston Consulting Group matrix, you want a variety of products if possible, some that are cash cows that are subsidizing dogs or other products in your portfolio. Stars where you're well known, but you have to put a lot of effort and time and energy into sustaining that position. And so it's nice to have a balance of those kinds of products. And you can see that in the Procter & Gamble example. That's it for Chapter 6. Thanks for tuning in.